Hi, and welcome to episode 1 of Kingdom Echoes. Today we're going to be diving into writing 101. As you can see, I still have my note cards. This is going to be part 1 of a 2-part video. So, the question you have to ask yourself is, am I doing the right thing when it comes to writing my book? Should I be doing outlines? And should I be focus on story structure? Or can I just write as I go? Well, I'm here to tell you that I had a whole pile of ideas, right? A whole pile of ideas that I put together. And to be honest with you, this has been a long time in the works. So it's not something that you do overnight. I wrote the first, second, and third part of my story originally back when I was in high school, like early high school. I hand wrote it, right? And it was horrible, but I was so enthralled with the storytelling aspect of things that I needed that escape. And I definitely escaped. I can tell you that, right? I was definitely out of there. Anyways, in a whole nother world. Anyways, so pile of ideas. I had those ideas and I brought them all together and I wrote those 3 treatments because I really can't call them books. They were treatments, and it had a lot of things wrong with it and I wasn't happy with it. So I kind of tucked it away and didn't know what to do with it. Back then, there was no internet the way it is now. Like, it was still kind of new. You didn't do a whole lot of things with the internet that you would even think about doing today. I'm 40 as at the making of this video. I'm 46. I'm about to be 47 in a couple months. And I can tell you that when I decided to pick this back up and go with it and write again, it was completely out of boredom. I had no idea that it was going to end up being something that I became so passionate about. So it took about, I would say, taking the concepts that I've created before and refocusing them and reforming them into something cohesive that made sense to me. I took it out of the real world, put it into a fantasy world, created the fantasy world, put the characters in the fantasy world, and then started building the lore, right? So what I did wrong, right, and it took some time to learn this, was I started from the beginning. Now, this isn't wrong for you or anybody else, but this was wrong for me. I need to know what happens at the end before I can figure out what happens in the beginning. So that's what I did. I built the ending first, or most of it. It all changed drastically as time went on, but I knew where I was headed for sure. So I had all these piles of ideas. Okay, so in most stories, there are in movies, stories, whatever, there are 3 acts to a structure, three-part structure. Okay. Now, I was determined to do exactly that. Have a beginning, a middle, and an end that kind of like fed itself like one into the other kind of seamlessly, right? So that's pretty much what I did. I like I said, I began with the ending in mind, and then I started messing around with chapters. Okay, so I've got this chapter, and then I immediately knew, because I'm a comic book fan. I'm not a book novel reader. I think the first novel series that I read was the Harry Potter ones, right? Which I don't think I took anything from per se. But I've got these little gnats flying around that drive me crazy. Anyways, I decided that for me to tell the story, I needed to have these side stories that fed into the main story. So I created these subchapters. So in Act 1, you've got the festival. You're introduced to the Team Dragon Force. You're introduced to Ariana, Prince Casey, who introduces Team Dragon Force, the King and Queen of Avian, Angelique, and this whole concept of there being a dragon festival, right? You have already gotten. I opened up with the backstory of King Donovan, how he became the Dragon King, and kind of fed into that backstory as kind of like your setup of what to expect. Hopped into the future where there's a Team Dragon Force and no Dragon King, right? And started the process of explaining through story who they were, Team Dragon Force, why they're needed, right? The end in mind, and how do I get there, right? So you're introduced to all the key players. I introduced you to Hawk, who is one of the key players, by giving him a separate story that happens in that beginning to show who he was and what he can do, right? And give him backstory, lore, stuff like that. So now, with all of that done, you've got that festival, you've got the one in Kamal that you just went through. If you're following along in the reading, that just happened. And now there's this mystery character who I've kind of thrown in there named Everett. Everett's kind of, fumbling along. He's obsessed with this, that, and the third, whatever. Okay, great. Boom. There's your first act, chapters and all, right? So that's literally, look at my cue card here, what you would call the spark. Okay. It's world introduction, right? But there's no incidents yet other than whatever kind of experiences. And that's his personal incident, not story incident, I think. Okay. So now we're moving into Act 2 of the Seven Kingdoms. And that is where the royals go on a pilgrimage. That video is the beginning of the first chapter of Act 2, and you get to see that Friday when that video drops. Okay, which is in 3 days. Okay, great, fantastic, wonderful. Okay, so you will, in that set of chapters that are what make up Act 2, you will see the pilgrimage as it begins. You will see escalating obstacles that kind of happen, right? Definitely towards the end of that act, right? And then you're going to see some transformations happen based on what is experienced. Okay. Act three, right? That is where I started. That is the climax. All right. So the climax unfolds. You've got the whole realm going through major changes because of things that are going on, right? You've got, I would say, more escalating obstacles, more escalating obstacles, more transformations, right? So it says Act 2 is where transformations happen. Yes, that's great, fantastic, wonderful. But the more, for me in this book, more transformations happen in Act 3 because it's so big on the meat of the story that you experience in Act 2, that it just escalates it to the T, man. And that climax, when you get to that, really, really explodes. Now, in the reading that we're doing over in the other playlist for Free Your Mind, we won't get there. I've explained that we are stopping before any of that happens. I will probably, will I get through all of Act 2? I'm not even sure we're going to make it through all of Act 2 before I stop, because I definitely don't want to spoil anything for you, So definitely, if you have not picked up a copy of this book, right, I am so in love with that story. I'm so in love with that story. And I really think that once you get through the first act, which is kind of, I play it loose. Once you get through that first act and you get into the interaction of these characters in Act 2, it really is going to pull you in. And you'll see, excuse me, you'll see where it kind of comes together and where it's headed, maybe, unless you're clueless. But I think I pretty much pull you along pretty well. and lead you right into the hands of the enemy, because there is an enemy. The synopsis of the book definitely talks about Hiroku, um, and his horde. So when do they come and play? You will find out in Act 2, and definitely see what they're all about in Act 3. These heroes, man, they're going to be challenged pretty well, and you get to be a part of that. So, but yeah, those that's the 3 parts of the structure of the story. I'm a big fan of movies, more so than books, which I know it's a horrible thing to say, because they say that if you're a writer, you should also be a reader. And I do read. Matter of fact, let me show you what I'm reading right now. I'm reading this Stephen King book right here. Right. This is what I'm in. I'm on page 150. Right. And I'm a slow reader. So I read about, if you are a slow reader, let me show you. I'll read. Whoops. Bye bye. That was my bookmark that I created for the 7 Kingdoms. I will read page 1, page 2, and then I stop. Because if I dedicate myself to starting with a page, ending with the next page, then I feel accomplished. So that's a good way to get through a book, which is what I do. Okay. This book is pretty nice. It's an easy read. This other book that I'm reading, because I read 2 at a time, it's called The Richest Man in Babylon. That's what I'm reading right now. This book, even though it's full of great things for you, if you're looking at business and making money and all this other stuff, it's a really good book, but it's a hard read for me. For me personally, it's a hard read. It's like asking me to read Think and Grow Rich, right? That's a hard book to read. What else? The Slight Edge, which is another business book. That's any business book to me. It's a slow read, honestly. Anyways, how to what's that one other one that I read that was really good? How to sell naked on the phone. That's a really good one. You should read that one. If you're of a business mindset, which is not what this video is about, but if you're looking for those kind of books that pull you in, those The Slight Edge and How to Sell Naked on the Phone. Those 2 are great. Anyways, now that I'm done with that rant, one of the things that I want to talk about in the climax that I do is I like to leave loose ends. This book is not a loose end, but there are elements of the ending that I leave I don't want to say open, but maybe questionable, that we can go back and revisit in another book, which I would say it's an idea. I won't say if I did it or not, but it's an idea for sure. So, hey, if you have any questions, concerns, you just hate this video altogether, or if it helped you at all, which is what I really hope it does, give it a like, a share, subscribe, another share. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.